I'm suddenly whisked off into this beautiful field of nothingness, this sapphire blue sky, and this young little boy is teaching me, look at the fireworks. All of us are just lights exploding like fireworks, and some people are afraid of the noise, and other people just say it's fun. And isn't it fun to just experience the fullness of life? That was my experience this morning in meditation. I faced this devil, which is nothing more than our human fears taking form. But it was fear literally unzipped. And I never made the connection until that moment when my guides, you saw them snag me. They said, go back to this morning. There was a reason that happened today.
Suzanne Giesemann, welcome to Fear Unzipped. You have no idea how happy I am to have you here. I've read your books. I took a course from you, Soul to Soul. One of your books profoundly changed my life, and synchronicities that came in are truly magical. That's all that I can say. And I'm going to read this because I want to get this right. I don't normally read my guest bios, but you are on the Watkins list of 100 most spiritually influential living people. No surprise to me whatsoever. Your gift of multidimensional communication has been verified in labs by noted afterlife researchers. Again, no surprise to me. There's something very special about you. And the thing is, the way you got started is a 180-degree change from what you're doing. And that is what I marvel about your story. So we're going to dive right in. Will you do me a favor and share with us your beginning, what you did before you became one of the world's top mediums? Yeah.
That's the 180 out part. I had a full career as a naval officer. I spent 20 years in the Navy. Never foresaw myself as a spiritual teacher or communicating across the veil. Very left brain, very by the book, had a very traditional career for a woman at that time. I wasn't allowed on ships by law, but I served ashore in 9 different tours. I taught political science at the Naval Academy. I have a master's degree in national security affairs. So there's that left brain side again. And I was a special assistant to the chief of naval operations in one tour, a commanding officer of a shore unit in another tour. And ultimately, my favorite job that was such an honor was being asked personally by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the entire United States military, to be his aide de camp. And that was awesome. It involved flying on Air Force One with the president. We flew around the world and met kings and queens personally. Top secret hearings on Capitol Hill. It was very exciting and certainly did not preview any of the work that I'm doing now.
So can you go in a little bit more with that? And how did you shift from that, which was very left brain, the work that you did to me was a matter of life and death. I mean, you had to have very specific facts behind what you were doing, I would presume, now, and tangible. So then what happened? How did you get into this new world of yours?
I got into it the way I find now that most people get into this path, the spiritual journey, through a major wake-up call. I had a wake-up call my final years in the Navy when I was in the last aircraft in U.S. airspace on September 11th. My boss was going to be knighted by Queen Elizabeth. We were out over the Atlantic and came back to our burning office building, the Pentagon, after flying directly over Manhattan. That's when I started asking deep spiritual questions, but I turned to traditional religion for answers, and it didn't satisfy me. I was not raised with any religion at all. So that was my first real foray into various religions. And I just set that aside. And my husband and I retired from the military, went off sailing into the sunset in our sailboat. Basically, Sandy, I was running away from life after 9/11. And life caught up with us when we were off the coast of Croatia. We had sailed there across the Atlantic Ocean. and we got word that we needed to call home from a payphone, if you remember what those are.
Oh, yeah.
And we have cell phone service in 2006 when this happened. And we found a phone and called home and found out that my stepdaughter, Susan, a sergeant in Marines, here she is right here, had been struck and killed by lightning crossing the flight line at work. Her husband didn't want her to go to Iraq. She wanted to volunteer and go to serve in Iraq. And he said, no, it's too dangerous. So she stayed back and was just reporting to duty and struck by a bolt out of the blue. But I see now that's part of some big soul plan, because as a result of her passing, I just checked my YouTube statistics. My videos have reached 12 million views. And that was my goal when I first discovered that there is a greater reality and that we are part of it now because we're souls. I said, this is my new mission, to reach millions with the awareness that we're souls. So those are numbers, but they're really validating that wake-up call served a real deeper purpose that we couldn't see at the time.
So then what happened? How did you happen to get into the mediumship side of it? Because I would imagine that's nothing you entertained in the past. And probably if somebody said, go see a medium, you'd go, what? That's ridiculous.
My husband didn't even know what mediums were when I took him to one. I happened to have picked up, I know that it was a setup, a book by medium James Van Praagh when we sailed to Italy and were at a U.S. Navy base visiting. They had a, fill a bag for $1 sale going on. And I said, oh, here's a book by a medium. I've heard about these people that allegedly speak to spirits. And as I read it, I just thought, this stuff is crazy. This thought of an afterlife that's so vivid and real, and people are doing things like they do here. And I didn't want my husband to even see me reading that book. And it was only weeks later that suddenly I had a burning desire to consult a medium to see if Susan was still accessible. I knew when I saw her body in the coffin, Sandy, that she had to still exist in some form. I knew there was a spirit that enlivens the body because it was missing from that vessel that I was looking at. So my discovery of this path was twofold. Number one, I set the goal to connect with Susan myself, and I began meditating the very week of her funeral, and I was not going to stop till I connected personally with her. And I didn't stop, and I did connect ultimately. But the second one was I needed to find a medium who didn't know our last name, because one of the first things we did was put a tribute to her online. And the internet was not quite as popular as it is now, but I thought, what if some medium that we go to found that tribute? I would never be able to trust what she says. So I found a medium that met my qualifications, took my husband, and the woman knocked our socks off with evidence, facts about Susan she couldn't have known. I didn't even tell her who I wanted to hear from, and she left no doubt that it was Susan, including the fact that this young woman in a brown uniform who's calling my husband Daddy brought with her a little baby boy she wanted to introduce. Susan was 6 months pregnant with a boy when she was killed. So that rocked my worldview, and I just knew mediumship was real. It was so healing to our family to know that somebody was connecting with her, that she was right there in the room with us. I had no doubt, and you can tell I'm not a gullible person from that background. And so I decided to write a book about mediumship. And in so doing, cutting this story shorter, I learned that I could connect across the veil as well and get good evidence. So it just has opened up from there.
So what I love about you is you are, I guess would be called an evidentiary medium.
Yes.
Where you are not going to quit until you get maybe, I think you said 5, or I don't know what it is, but I thought I heard you say 5 pieces of evidence. So you're not just saying, oh, Uncle Joe is here and he loves you so much. You're saying, right, Uncle Joe's wearing a red and white striped sweater, the one you just hated, and he's wearing it because...
That would work.
Yeah, exactly. So, but what took you from reading the book, seeing the medium, and then getting these skills. Did you get any training in that?
Yes, I got a lot of training. I wrote the biography of Anne Gaiman. That became my book, The Priest and the Medium. But I'm not the medium in the title. It was about her. Had no idea when I wrote it I would be a medium one day. And then another medium, Janet Nohavec, asked me to write her book. So she taught classes in mediumship. I was sitting in the back of her class studying what she taught so I could write about her teaching. And I was fascinated, Sandy, because she taught systems such as you tell the spirits that every time they come through, these are the types of details you want, and they'll give it to you. I thought, man, if you could get that kind of information every time, it would take away all doubt in people's mind. That would be great. And suddenly Janet called me to the front of the room like I was one of the students, but I wasn't. And she said, there's a spirit standing here. What do you sense? The thing is, because I had been sitting quietly in the silence every day for 2 years at that point saying, Susan, I'm not giving up till I sense you. And I hadn't yet at 2 years, but I was not going to give up. I didn't realize I was training myself in focus and spacious awareness. So when Janet had me standing in front of the room, the Navy officer in me was not going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I said, all right, I'll do my best. I'll try. And I closed my eyes and I did not feel a presence at that time. Now I won't do a reading unless I feel a presence. But I did discern male, 70 years old, passed from cancer, and engineer. And this woman in the class raised her hand. She said, that's my dad. He was 70 when he passed from cancer. He was an engineer. And I thought, I know I just pulled that out of the air. I was making that up. But Janet said, yeah, it is a man. And he's telling me his birthday was March 31st. And he had a baseball cap collection. And the girl says, yeah, this was such a moment, Sandy, because I thought, you mean there really is someone here? Because I don't see him. I don't feel him. But I heard and sensed those things. And Janet said, push yourself a little more, Suzanne, get more. I didn't know how I was getting it, but I closed my eyes. I don't have to close my eyes anymore. And I said, well, I just saw patent leather shoes and I heard twinkle toes. And this girl in the class said, my dad was a ballroom dancer, wore those patent leather shoes, and my mom always called him Twinkle Toes. Yeah. So I said, I'm all in now. Teach me how to do this. Janet had a series of 3 weekend classes. That was all. I took her full series. And then I said, if I can help one other family find hope and comfort like that medium did for us, I'm all in. I want to see how far I can take this. So I traveled to England to study where Janet had studied at the Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Sciences. Just a 1-week class. But really, Sandy, once you learn the tools and the techniques, like the class that you took from me, then it's a matter of doing it, doing the work and working on yourself to expand your consciousness, to raise it, to learn how to connect as clearly as possible with beings who are right here, just on a different channel.
Yes, trust is the word that always comes right in front of my face. I see shiny letters, trust, because we really need to trust this. After reading your book, Wolf's Message, my intuitive abilities and mediumship abilities catapulted because there's so much evidence in there that all this is real. I've always known it's real, but deep down inside you're going, oh, am I making it up?
Oh, sure. That's everybody's biggest challenge. It really is.
Exactly. So I am very curious what your friends and colleagues thought of you when here's this woman who is, a military person going from that to mediumship and believing in things beyond the veil and things you can't see. What was the reaction from family, friends, colleagues?
Very few people don't get excited at the thought of an afterlife. Very few people haven't had what I call a no other explanation moment. So we're all like these little closet afterlife junkies. I really believe that. And the beauty in my background is they know me. and they know they can trust me. So it gives people the permission, tacit permission to talk about these things. Because, for example, there's a documentary about my change in careers called Messages of Hope. It's on Amazon Prime and YouTube. And we recreated the scene where I came out of the closet about my new work to the former enlisted aide to the chairman. I was the senior officer aide to the chairman. And he's now CEO of his own company. And we met at a steakhouse and we're having this nice little talk. And I said, Ranger, that's his nickname, Ranger Jones. I said, Ranger, I need to tell you what I'm doing right now. And I told him about talking to people who have passed. And he looked at me. He took his cell phone, he turned it off, he moved it away, and he said, if this were anybody else, I would be saying, waiter, check, please. And that's the reaction I've gotten from everyone, including my husband, who knows me better than anybody. He says he knows I don't lie. He knows I don't exaggerate. And he hears the evidence that I discern every time. And you can't deny it. Can't deny it's real.
That's why your story is really unique, Suzanne, because it is, like I said, a polar opposite situation. Somebody I would absolutely trust something coming out of you because I know that you need evidence.
Yeah.
And that's what you grew up with. That was your career. And I know that's what you live by, which I think is really important, because I do think in this field, we can find some charlatans out there. So I think you have to be very, very careful who you trust and who you listen to, because it can be harmful.
I just did a session yesterday for a woman, and I didn't realize that she'd had a session a year ago, and she sent me feedback afterwards, and she was so grateful because she said that medium did a lot of harm, and yesterday's session was so healing. And so I do some readings that I call damage control readings, where I hear about people who've had a very unfortunate experience with a charlatan or somebody who wasn't trained well. They might their hearts might be in the right place, but you can do harm. And I'm grateful for the times when I'm able to show people, don't believe anything unless you leave and have zero doubt in your mind that was my loved one, and the evidence is going to do that.
Yes, because lots of times I think we go to some people or to intuitives, and there are more questions that we have than answers, and it gets very, very confusing. Yeah. And then you have to keep going back and you're still confused. I so much appreciate your work and what it's done for me as well. So did you have fear? Because we're talking about fear on this podcast, that what I have found in my work, and I used to work in Hollywood as a PR, I had my own PR firm. I don't care how rich you were. I don't care how attractive you are. I don't care how successful you are. Everybody had fear of some kind, and self-doubt and lack of, and some sense of worthlessness. So I'm just curious that did you, when you went out to tell people that I'm now a medium, were you fearful about that? Were you fearful about your identity?
It was challenging, especially when I went public with the channeling aspects of my work, where my guides, who we call Sanaya, speak directly through me. I close my eyes, I get an expanded state, and suddenly my voice changes a little bit, my gestures change, but their wisdom and their energy is so much more than anything I could personally do, that we've had people have physical healings by attending these sessions. And I finally got the nerve up to put it online, and it's been very well received. I can see the healing it does for people. And so I often ask myself, why wouldn't I do that? So yeah, it's been a matter of getting past that. But I don't have that fear anymore. I don't fear anything anymore.
Oh, see, that's a beautiful thing. Seriously. It's to live life without fear. You can live and you can find joy. And I feel that we are really lacking in joy because we are living in a very fear-based world.
Well, the key to my work, you called me a medium several times, and I'm making my best effort to get people to stop referring to me as a medium and know me as a spiritual teacher. Because the mediumship leads to this awareness. And it's my book, The Awakened Way, right here. It's all about showing we are souls here and now, and that we need to learn to live in both roles. And when you recognize fear in yourself, you simply say without judgment, oh, I'm identifying as only human. Then you make this shift. The subtitle of the book is Making the Shift to a Divinely Guided Life. So you just simply shift the channels again. You, the soul, are already living on this higher frequency channel where there is no fear and no judgment of any fear you have as a human. That's so liberating. You use the word freedom. And so I just recognize when I go into fear, it's not that I don't go there at all, but if I feel a little bit of the what if, what will people think, I just immediately, it's kind of like, that's okay, honey. You just set aside, we got you. We know who we are. And you shift.
I think that's great. Lee Harris, if you're familiar with Lee Harris, he channels the Z's, beautiful group of beings. And they say, awareness is the precursor of change. So if you're aware that, oh my gosh, I'm acting fearful again, great, you're aware, and now you can put it in its place. It's just for it. If it festers inside of you and keeps creating angst, that's when we can get into trouble. And I lived much of my life in anxiety, and also was successful in my work because of it. It catapulted me.
Okay. But
And
that's a better way. That's what we say. There's a better way, the awakened way.
exactly, because I got to a point where I thought, okay, this isn't worth it. Yes, I have success, but I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. That shifted dramatically for me. A light switch went off when I started. Both my parents passed away 4 months apart. So I was very sad, to say the least. So I wanted to learn how the brain works, and I got into neuroscience.
Good.
That shifted everything, which catapulted my intuitive abilities, because the two go hand in hand. And I love the way neuroscience and metaphysics are meeting each other, and you're doing that.
Yeah.
That they're not separate. They are now meeting each other. And that's what this podcast is about. What would you offer to people? I mean, losing a loved one is so challenging, or losing an animal, a pet, it's just painfully challenging. Yes. What would you offer to them to ease that?
Oh, easily. We call it the 3 E's of living the awakened way. Number 1, and your show is helping with this, is educate yourself about the greater reality. And that includes self-inquiry. Am I really only human? Start asking questions. What is God? Is there another way to frame that that's more empowering? So watch podcasts, read about neuroscience, read about science. I coined the term 21st century spirituality. That combines the science, the neuroscience, and it's not all woo-woo. So read the literature that says scientifically proven there is an afterlife. So educate yourself. Then for those who are grieving, experience this greater reality for yourself through expanded states of consciousness. And I have tools, I have guided meditations, I have processes. You can take classes, but I also have all the material free online on YouTube. I would start with my Sip of the Divine 3 minutes a day practice to experience expanded consciousness and go to the different channels that are available. That's on YouTube on a video called No More Meditation Excuses. And then the 30 is engage higher consciousness for yourself. You may not believe in spirit guides yet, but trust me, they are real. And that was something I was afraid to tell people years ago, but I guarantee we all have unseen helpers who are just waiting to work with you like equal team members and make your life flow easier. Start talking to your loved ones who have passed. Ask for signs, ask for evidence. All of these tools are in the Awaken Way book and my new one coming out here soon, Mediumship.
I have it on pre-order. I'm so excited about it. And I get Audible and the hardback because I want both. Signs are big. Signs are very big for me. They have proven themselves over and over again. Can you give some examples of maybe stories in your experience of signs that just went, whoa.
Oh, the thing about signs is you ask your guides or your loved ones when you sense a presence or you hear a message, you get guidance. You just on the spot say, what sign are you going to send me to validate that this is real? Then you just go quiet, listen, boom, something pops in your mind or you see an image, hear it or see it or sense it, know it. You just tuck that aside and wait for it to pop up in your life. So I received a really great bit of wisdom from my main guide in a morning meditation one day. I write it down as I'm receiving it. And I said, that was really great. And they don't mind me putting them to the test. None of our loved ones do, because it just shows you're willing to work with them.
Yeah.
So I said, to validate this conversation, what sign are you going to give me? And he said, watermelon, and showed me a watermelon. We're not big watermelon eaters. My husband and I would never come home naturally with watermelon from the grocery store. So I just thought, well, that'll be interesting to see how that comes up. That very night, my husband decided to go for a walk in the dark. He said, I want to get one more mile in on my 10,000 steps here. And he goes for the walk in the dark. I see this all as spirit orchestrating this. His guide probably said, go for a walk. And he just had that idea, right? So I suddenly had the idea, well, I rarely watch TV. I think I'll just see what's on my iPad. For some reason, I went to a network I don't normally go to. I went down the list of shows. There was a crime show. I never watch crime shows, Sandy. But okay, this looks interesting. And I pull up a show, and it's all about a murder that took place in this town. And they're interviewing a newspaper guy. And I'm just watching. I have no idea I'm about to be knocked off my couch, figuratively. All of a sudden, this newspaper reporter says, and our town is known as the watermelon capital of the world. And he didn't just say it one time, Sandy. Next thing you know, here's a picture of the town water tower with a watermelon on it. And here's a picture of the sign at the entrance to the town with a watermelon. And he says, and every year we have the watermelon seed spitting contest. It went on and on and on with the watermelons. And I said, okay, I get it. But the next morning, as I was passing my husband's study, my guide very clearly said, go pull out that box you saw on the shelf yesterday. It was a box of mementos of my dad's. I didn't open it the day before. I just noted it. So I said, okay. I pull out the box. I open the lid, and it's full of my dad's old first day covers. He was a stamp collector. And a first day cover is the first day of issue of a new stamp. They put it on an envelope, they stamp it, and the collectors get to keep it. There were easily 200 of those in there that I've never looked at. I just inherited that from my dad. And my guide said, pull one out. So I reached randomly into there. I pull it out, and the stamp is a watermelon. It was so magical, so magical. And this is anecdotal, but I have experiences, I think, what book is it in? I think it's in the Awaken Way book, about my guide saying, I'm about to pull out a book off the shelf as we're going cross country from my RV. I'm ready to start a new book. And the guide said, don't read that book, read that book. And I said silently, I don't want to read that book. And he said, no, read that book. So I pulled it down. I'm opening the book, and I was very clearly guided to go to the back. And he said, open the back cover. And there's a picture of the place we visited the day before. We were 2,600 miles from home. We'd been traveling for 2.5 months. I had never opened this book before. It was in a stack of new books, and that was the place we were the day before. Then I looked down at the bottom, and there's a place with an address. I felt guided to look it up. We were going right by this place the next day. The story goes on and on, but the message was your guides know exactly where you are at any moment and where you're going, literally and figuratively. I could tell you stories for hours if not.
I know. That's why I said to a friend, Suzanne could be on the podcast every day and we wouldn't even scratch the surface here because you do have great stories. I know that story. That story took you to a place that was not of the highest intent. Yeah. And it guided you. I think it gave you a direction that you didn't want to go.
Yeah, I said, why did you send me to that place? It was like a cult place. And the guide said, because some of the other books on your shelf that you haven't yet read, we're going to take you down some rabbit holes that we don't want you to go down. They said, your path is very clear. Teach only love. And the books they weren't about hate. They were about other really esoteric topics. And they said, you are here to attract a mainstream audience to the awareness that you are all souls here and now, and that it's all about the connection that we enjoy. So I threw those books out. It was stunning, the lesson.
I do feel that connection, Suzanne. I feel how we're all integrated with one another. The synchronicities with you were just uncanny to me. And I read Wolf's Message, which everybody must read that book. I mean, I've read all your books. Every one of them has made a difference in my life. But that book is magic. And I know you're doing a documentary.
So excited.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for you and for us. I'm more excited for us, actually.
It's so clearly being guided from above, because the way things have fallen together with the perfect filmmakers who are doing it from the heart, who really gets what we need to get across in this. He's not sensationalizing any of it. And as you know from reading the book, we don't need to sensationalize it. The story stands alone as phenomenal.
It's such a beautiful story. And I want listeners here to know we do have these guides. We have loved ones around us. There is love around us always, and you're never, ever, ever alone, even though you might feel it. And if you just take a moment to just soak in the magic. Now, I get it out in nature, and I talk to my trees. And I'm telling you, there's great words of wisdom that come from them. I have my guides. I did want to share with you that from your book, Wolf's Message, I'd been listening to it on Audible. I'm in my car, I'm in a parking lot, and this license plate in front of me, I like license plates very much. I get lots of messages. I said, what is that word? It looks like Sanaya. What is Sanaya? It was spelled, and that's how I said it out loud. It's Sanaya. That's interesting. I don't know what that means. I always want to know. I want to ask the owner, what does your license plate mean? Then I get further into your book and you start talking about Sanaya. And I went, holy crap. Literally, I just went, holy crap. I said, there's something about this woman. We are going to connect. I just knew it, Suzanne. I knew it. I had no thoughts of a podcast at all. Mm-hmm. And then in your book, you had an artist. You talked about Barry Mack. He lives in my hometown. I thought, I'm just going to send him an email and say, hey, I loved your story in Suzanne Giesemann's book. He didn't know me. 2 days later, he emails me, let's have coffee. He lives 2 miles from me. Yeah, he's incredible. We become the best of friends, and we talk. And that's when the genesis of the podcast started coming to be. We talked. And I said, I think I need to do this. Yeah. So that came from Wolf.
Wow.
Guess what?
Oh, it's something that happened in meditation this morning. Just made the connection with the title of your podcast, Fear Unzipped. Oh my gosh.
Can you share that? Or
yeah. It's really out there. It's going to really give people something to think about. I'm going to share it in my monthly connection webinar on Tuesday night.
Oh, thank you.
But I sat this morning and I said to my guides, it's been a long time since I've just really sat for a while and let you just take me somewhere. And I said, I would love for you to bring me a higher being and just somebody that I don't expect, and teach me something I need that will help me and help others. So I sat down, and all of a sudden I went into an expanded state, and a Black Panther showed up at my side. And he's come in multiple times for me. He said, that's a whole other story, which you might have read about in one of my books. Mm-hmm. And usually when he shows up, he's a protector. And there's usually, he's shown up a couple times in my readings when people who did truly evil things in this life come through to speak to their loved ones for apologies and forgiveness. So I thought, oh, that's interesting that he's here. And he put on little paw protectors, like he was going to step on something hot. And I suddenly knew where this was going. And I had a leash in my hand to attach me to him, and he led me through this lava field of burning coals. And I suddenly started seeing scenes from that movie, the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come, the awful people burning in hell that are saying, let me out of here. I felt zero fear whatsoever. I knew this was just an adventure in consciousness. But suddenly ahead of me, I saw a figure that I knew was Lucifer. I wasn't raised with any religion, but I thought, well, isn't this interesting? And I was very aware that I had no fear. So you're taking me to meet the devil. And I thought, this will be very interesting because that's one figure I've never met. I always meet all these loving, wonderful beings, but the panther, full protection. And I know that nothing is real. You and I, we're not ultimately real. The only real is consciousness itself. So I stepped before him and he said, you're not afraid of me? And I said, no. And he reached up and he recreated a moment that I have told in several workshops about seeing beings who suddenly pull a zipper down, unzipped, and out steps Jesus. This has happened to me with my brother, who I was having a hard time with one issue, and he reaches up and unzips it, and out steps Jesus. It's symbolic of all that exists is Christ consciousness, which is not really Jesus. It's the awareness that all of us have, that ultimately we're all connected as consciousness, awareness itself. And so with no fear, this emanation of consciousness for my learning just unzipped the costume, because he really looked like the proverbial Halloween costume with the devil's horns. And he unzipped it, and it was, here's this loving being saying, you passed the test. There's nothing to fear. And all these creatures here that you see in this movie, like Set, they are afraid. And all they have to do is make the choice to not be afraid, and it's instant liberation. And then out, I'm suddenly whisked off into this beautiful field of nothingness, this sapphire blue sky, and this young little boy is teaching me, look at the fireworks. All of us are just lights exploding like fireworks, and some people are afraid of the noise, and other people just say it's fun. And isn't it fun to just experience the fullness of life? That was my experience this morning in meditation. I faced this devil, which is nothing more than our human fears taking form. But it was fear literally unzipped. And I never made the connection until that moment when my guides, you saw them snag me. They said, go back to this morning. There was a reason that happened today.
I'm getting chills. And okay, that story, you just can't make this stuff up. You can't.
I'm making it up. I can share that in my webinar.
and Suzanne, when it comes down to, I truly believe that like the devil image or that image is an illusion of what we've created of fear.
No doubt.
So, and the Jesus image is just this loving Christ consciousness. So nothing here is religious.
That's right. These are all stories. You and I are stories.
Absolutely. It's all an illusion. The only thing that's real.
Our pain is very real, but it is, it's all, I would say it's all an experience in consciousness, but not solid.
And nothing's solid because everything's moving. It's energetic. So nothing is solid.
Yeah.
I'm a little blown away by that story. So I'm kind of taken aback. But Suzanne, I heard something recently that I thought was so beautiful, and it's about grief. When we grieve, we have loved. And that, it touched my heart in a way I'm gonna get teary-eyed here, because if you grieve deeply for a loved one, for an animal, I'm very connected to animals as well, to humans. If you grieve deeply, it means you've loved deeply. How beautiful is that? So you have this gorgeous, gorgeous balance of grief and love. And I find that very comforting.
It is. And it's so important to acknowledge that is part of the fullness of the human journey we came here as souls to experience. I was raised by parents who said, you have to be happy all the time, shut down any anger, any fear, any sadness, grief. My mom didn't cry when my dad of 61 years of marriage died. She was so steeped in her BS, her belief system that you don't cry and you don't grieve. And I'm so happy I got over that, because this work, the awakened why, the phrase my guides gave me that's so true, is it takes you from this emptiness that can't be filled to a fullness that you just can't contain. And so shoving down your grief and saying you're not allowed to grieve is why we feel empty, because you're not appreciating the fullness of the human experience, which includes pain. So feel it, but don't wallow in it forever. Acknowledge it, feel it, because it means you loved deeply. And that's transmuting the grief to a gift. So you're absolutely right.
Exactly. I think all the human emotions, I think we're so lucky to have human emotions. My guides once said to me, Suzanne, that we are very respected galactically out there. Humans are very respected because we do get to experience all the emotions, that they're in a different place. And so there is an honoring of us. There's a great respect of us. And that was a whole journey I was taken on, and I won't go into that, but it was really spectacular. So I believe in honoring all of our emotions, sadness, even jealousy and envy. You've got to kind of feel it and then let it go. You know, you have to know what it's like, because you don't want to stick with that. You don't want to stick with those emotions at all. So can you share with us, well, there are so many things. One is, what would you say to people? They talk about their loved ones, but they think they get stuck and they don't transition over, and they're hanging around kind of in a void. What is your take on that? And what's Sanaya say about that?
They would like us to not use that word stuck. There may be some stories that soul is living, personalities that are a bit confused to find themselves in a different reality all of a sudden. But we always have choice. So they through their own will, notice, wait, something's different here. I notice there might be something more loving, and you make a choice to go towards that. And there are always helpers to help people completely accept and acknowledge that we're on a different channel now. There are different rules in this here. We don't have gravity anymore. We can travel at will, that kind of thing. So I would not worry about loved ones being stuck at all, and just know that all souls have a choice to choose love and to choose continuing the experience as long as they want. They will always be accessible to us no matter where they are. We talk to our loved ones and they sense it.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in, when I can, this is not all the time, but living from my heart. And I was in a situation yesterday where somebody was just not nice at all. Mm-hmm. And it was actually my gym. And I thought, okay, this is irritating, but guess what? I am going to quietly here. I was shooting baskets in the basketball court. I'm going to quietly give them love. Oh, I'm just going to give them love. And oh my gosh, Suzanne, this guy turned around and was just so nice to me. And I swear that was a huge difference. And I knew it worked.
Yes, it does.
And we're human, and sometimes we're just pissed off, and we can't go there. But I have a rule with myself that I will allow myself maybe to be in a space like that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't do it. I will not stay there longer. It doesn't do me any good. And the energy I'm putting out in the world is not going to help anybody.
You can feel it in you the second you meet you. If you have this beautiful, loving energy. And that's something we can train ourselves to do, to come to a place of love. And it takes awareness.
Can you share a couple more stories just about magical moments when people connected with their loved ones, or anything that is beyond the veil that we can't tangibly see out here? I know you have so many, so it's hard to probably pinpoint.
A common one, but I'm hoping that you're bringing this to a new audience so they can appreciate how real this is. A woman came to me whose doctor sent her to me for a session. And I found that stunning, but the doctor had run out of hope. She was just so depressed. And I didn't know anything about her. She sat down and I tuned in and I said, oh, you have a husband who passed. And I have a pain in my head. And he shows me that was an aneurysm, just very sudden. You didn't get to say goodbye. So right away you have that. Those are the evidence. We go for male, sudden passing, didn't get to say goodbye, aneurysm. And she said, yes, she was stunned. And I said, he's telling me he's so proud of you because you're going to travel by yourself for the first time since he passed, and you have tickets to go to England. And that's a really good piece of evidence right there. Her eyes got really wide and she said, how do you know that? And this is what we're talking about, evidence. It's things that you won't find on Google if you were unethical and looked up somebody, these things you couldn't possibly know. And I said, because he's right here telling me this. And she was stunned. And now my big thing in the reading is to capture their essence. What's their personality like beyond generic? And that leaves people saying, oh my God, that is my loved one, beyond just the evidence. So we captured his personality. And then near the end of the reading, he said, tell her this word for word. Don't you dare take those pills in your purse. And her eyes got really big and she said, what nobody knows, I got goosebumps. What nobody knows is I stopped at the drugstore on the way here. And I said, if I don't hear from you, I'm coming to join you. I was really glad I didn't know that before the reading, but there are many times in a reading when a loved one will say they want to join me. And I'll say, you are actively thinking of suicide. And they're telling you, you have more to live for here. I don't hide it. I don't pussyfoot around it. No, your loved ones know about it. And they're here to tell you it's not your time. And that's why I've had dozens of people come up and say, your work saved my life. And I know there aren't many professions where you get to do that. It's such an honor and a responsibility. That's what I try to instill in my students. That's why we're very careful to make sure we're delivering the messages correctly.
Responsibility is so important. This world of spirituality, and I wish there was another word I could come up with. It's getting saturated in many ways with people that I don't think have our best interests in mind. And so it's very important. And that's something I can kind of read energy. And so I know what feels right and what doesn't. And that's why I was super excited to have you on the podcast.
Find practitioners by word of mouth.
Yes.
Somebody else that had a session and said, this person's the real deal. And they did a good job. And we all have our moments and our fluctuating energy. So
sure.
Somebody had one good session, I'll have an off day and I'll call up for reading if it doesn't go well. I'm not taking new clients, by the way. I'm really focusing on the books and the teaching, and I'm still working with people who've been waiting a long time. But you get somebody by word of mouth and then you'll trust.
Yes, I was actually going to ask you that, and I assumed you're just very busy doing. I think you can reach the masses more and change lives more with the books and the courses and the projects that you're doing, and certainly the movies, the new movie that's coming out. I have, to me, it was a beautiful story when my father passed. He was with me immediately. He was actually in the car with me. I could see him. He was laughing. And when I say see, and I think this is something listeners might want to know, what are you seeing? Are you actually seeing the person, or are you just knowing and you feel it? So I felt him, and I could see him in my mind's eye. When my mom passed, she was gone. And I even talked to her before, and I said, please, Mom, stay in touch. I really want to stay in touch. She was gone. So one day I went into my office, and I was kind of at my wit's end, and I said out loud in this office, Mom, send me a sign, just any sign, because I just want to know you're okay. I just want to know you're okay. And I told my daughter I did that. And because I wanted somebody to know that I did that just in case something came in. The next morning, my girlfriend calls me, and it's a voicemail. Sandy, you're not going to believe this, but your mom was just here. She was telling me how much she loves you. Don't worry about her. She's doing great. Suzanne, I screamed out loud when I got the voice message. I went, oh my God, oh my God. Because even though I have evidence of this, I still am amazed every time.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. If we ever get bored or blasé about this, we should hang it up.
because it's a gift that keeps giving. And I said, okay, this is real. And now, I mean, I always ask for questions. I ask for signs pop up. Like I ask for absurd signs and they show up. So I want people to know, play with this, have fun with it.
Yeah.
Ask for something that could be out of the blue. I mean, I have so many stories like that, but how about somebody who is going through a very challenging time and a fearful time? It might not be from grief, but a very fearful time and maybe a bit of paralysis. What is something that you would recommend that they do that might catapult them out of that a bit?
Reading stories of people's near-death experiences is a great place to start, because universally the experience is that these people who may not have had any belief in a greater reality are so surrounded by love, and you can't explain these stories any other way than that there's more to us than our stories, and that helps us to put our stories and the drama in perspective. Once you then start having your own experience through meditative experiences, we make the shift to looking at ourselves from a higher perspective, like going onto the balcony in a theater. And you're up there, it's the soul looking down at yourself on the stage. And the perfect phrase that my guides teach everybody is, isn't that interesting? When you look at what you're afraid of, or you look at the drama you're going through, and you can say, isn't that interesting? You suddenly realize there is another way of looking at everything. And it gives you perspective. You know, we buy movie tickets and go into a theater to deliberately be scared and horrified or brought to tears and grieve. But we do it because we know it's safe, that we can at any time step out in the lobby and buy some popcorn. Then when we catch our breath, when we say it's only a movie, we go back in. Well, once you come to know yourself as a soul, you can step up on the balcony at any time. And my friends and I, we sometimes, when we hear each other's stories and what we're going through, we look at each other and say, pass the popcorn, because it just puts it in perspective that we're not only the stories, this is drama. It's very real, but we can find different thoughts. Why is somebody else not so afraid when I tell them my story? Because they don't have our filters.
Right.
So we can reframe the story and say, is there another way to look at this? Can I find peace by looking at it from their perspective? Then right away the person says, but you're not living with this. And we say, you're right, but rise above it and see it differently.
So when you say, isn't that interesting? Think about how that shifts energetically in your body. So a thought becomes an emotion, becomes your personality, really, because if you latch on to a thought of fear, and then it becomes the emotion of fear, and then you're out there going, oh my God, I'm so scared. Rather, if you say, well, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Love that, because we need to, our words carry so much emotion and energy that we have to be very, very careful with what we say to ourselves. And we're not very nice to ourselves a lot of the time. We're very nice to our friends, but we're not nice to ourselves. So I really try to shift that language in my mind.
Yes. People go to my website, SuzanneGiesemann.com/gifts. On the gifts page is a beautiful channeled meditation with channeled music called The Journey of Remembrance. And it just touches the soul and reminds us of the sacred aspects of the soul, one of which is courage and another is strength. That's innately part of us. And that to bring that to the forefront when we're going through a challenge is very helpful.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So much more to talk about. We must have a date another time. I'd love to chat with you again. But I do have some questions that I ask everybody, and we're just going to fire these off. Is there something that you would love to do, but fear is holding you back?
Nope. Nothing. Nothing.
Can I ask you, if we go back to your former life, would you have that same answer?
Oh, not at all. There would have been many things. And well, I remember when I was aide to the chairman, and he was big into skydiving, and we went up with the Golden Knights, the Army's Golden Knights, the premier skydiving people. And he said, parachutist, he said, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do just because you're my aide. And I said, sir, I don't want to jump out of this aircraft. I don't want to in tandem or otherwise. Yeah. And I didn't do it. And do I regret that? Nope. I didn't do it at the time because I was afraid. Now I wouldn't do it because I have no desire to do it.
Right.
You know, just because we say this world is silent doesn't mean you step in front of a moving train.
Suzanne, I did it. I did jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
I could tell by your little catch there.
And can I just tell you, it was one of the greatest days of my life and catapulted me even further. Then I bought a motorcycle after that. So what would be your number one go-to strategy for somebody who's in a mental distress? Something that in this moment, like they're in a panic moment, what would you suggest they do?
Immediately, the answer is a vagus nerve breath, which I talk about in the Awake and Wait book. That's where you breathe in very slowly through your nose, willing yourself to relax. Really, the count of 1, 2, that slowly. And then you exhale to the count of 6. And those extra 2 counts put pressure against the rib cage and against the vagus nerve, which triggers the relaxation response in your body. So you're literally taking your body and using it as an instrument to help you relax more. And it just feels so good. It'll stop a craving in its tracks because we usually are just stressed. So vagus nerve breaths at any time, but when you're in distress, it's that deep breath and self-talk, just assuring yourself all is well. And then ask for help by all means.
That's beautiful. That's actually mine also, my go-to as well. Do you have a quirky habit or a hobby that somebody would not expect?
Well, I guess it would be my husband and I that on cue, we don't have to say a word to each other. If we're with company and they think we're all serious, we look at each other like that and we know that's the cue and we both do this.
Okay, that's it. Okay, so listeners, you can't see what she just did.
It's called the Space Cadet Slow. You and her.
She made goggles out of her fingers, and it's very funny to look at. And actually, that would make everybody laugh. I love that. That's so fantastic. Suzanne, what do you think our purpose is on this planet?
Oh, to be the presence of love and take back a higher consciousness to the soul than we came with. The soul is already whole and complete, but we take just an aspect of the soul, like the tip of an iceberg, and say, go forth and see how many opportunities you can turn into love moments. And you did that in the gym. So you're right on purpose.
Oh, I love that. And what do you consider a successful life?
Oh, yes. That I love your show. You to have love fully and overcome fear.
Beautiful. And finally, finish this sentence. In the past I was, and now I am.
In the past I was unaware that I am not only human, and now I am so content to live life from the soul's perspective.
And you can feel that in you. You feel so comfortable in your own skin. It's so beautiful to talk to you. Now, where can people find out more about you? I think you've talked about it a little bit.
SuzanneGiesemann.com, and check out on any smartphone the Awake and Wait app to get daily messages directly channeled from my guides. For something inspirational every day, definitely check out my YouTube channel. I'm just back from leading 450 of our community on a Mediterranean cruise. Everybody commented, oh my gosh, everybody in your group is so loving, so connected. What is it? And I said, that's because they all know about the Awaken Way. And we're doing another cruise to the Caribbean in the spring. I'm not usually one for marketing pitches, but Sandy, honestly, the sense of love and connection was phenomenal with workshops and tools for living this way. So great opportunities all over the place.
So just surround yourself with love. Nothing can be better than that, as far as I'm concerned. Suzanne, it is such an honor to have you here.
Well,
I've enjoyed it so much.
You're coming from the heart, and your energy is so beautiful. So thank you for helping people.
So sweet.
That fear.
Until we meet again, we must have you on again and again and again. Okay. Bye-bye. Sending tons of love your way.